In the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. I just love that. Every now and then, I go through a little bit of a dark night of the soul over here. And this doesn't usually happen to me in the summertime, summer being one of my favorite seasons and all, and the sunshine being one of my favorite words in the English language. But this year, the dark night of the soul has come during what should be the shiniest time. And it's fine. Don't worry. It's nothing crazy. I've just been facing some setbacks this summer. And so it has me doing some soul searching and some reevaluating and reinventing and changing my mind on some things that I held fast and true to who I actually was, and also what I think and what I believe, and where I want to spend my time and what I want to be a part of. Now, I have not changed my mind entirely on the concept of consistency, and suddenly become like anti consistency. I do think, though, that a la Emerson, that foolish, unquestioned consistency is a hobgoblin of the mind. And we don't want to be clinging to old, gone, dead, dying, and tried and true in lieu of growth. And so I think sometimes we treat consistency as like an end all be all virtue. And we think that changing our mind or taking up a new position or pivoting, that is like some sort of character flaw. But what if it really is more of like an even split? And at least half of the time, it's actually what you should be doing to propel you forward. That's what we're going to get into in today's episode. Welcome to Small Business Casual, where business is personality packed, cozy, and your pets are part of the team photo. I'm Emily Aborn, small business copywriter, and I'm here to help you turn down the noise, clarify your message, and run a business that actually fits your life. All right, welcome back. Right off the bat, we need to define and look at this word consistency. We need to talk about what it is and what it isn't, because sometimes consistency can get painted in a little bit, I think, of a negative light. And I think that's because people often associate consistency with meaning that you do the exact same thing at the exact same time every single day, or you push through when you're exhausted and when you're burned out, or you just push through any and all discomfort. And I think that they kind of give it like this, like if you are the person who's touting consistency, right, you're like maybe holier than thou, or you're high and mighty, or I'm better at you, or look at how I do this every day and rain and shine even with a broken arm. It's that kind of vibe. That to me is not real consistency. That is stubbornness, and in some cases it can be inflexibility, and it's not always useful to be consistent in that way. In fact, it may even be keeping you stuck if you are rigidly consistent, but it's with something that's not working. You see, you can be heading consistently in the wrong direction just as much as you can be heading consistently in the right one. The other terms I want to get kind of sorted out are the difference between frequency and consistency, because those get confused a lot and they're not one and the same. You can be consistent, deeply consistent, at a low frequency, meaning you do not need to show up every single day to be consistent. You could show up once a week, you could show up once a month, you could show up once a year. But when you do show up, you show up consistently, and that is consistently to you, or consistently in a time frame, or consistently however you've defined it. It's a much looser definition. Frequency is how often you do a thing. Consistency is going to be the standard by which, or the commitment with which you do a thing. The other thing about consistency that I want you to think about is that there's smart consistency and foolish consistency, right? And they're both kind of sitting on our shoulders like this. Smart consistency involves, for example, being reliable, being true to your word, being the best, working the best to the best of your ability, upholding your values and a very high standard for your work, for your clients, for your life. Foolish consistency, on the other hand, is when we refuse to change or we don't get rid of things that aren't working. We never question or review our opinions and we don't switch things up because we want to maybe protect our ego or we're worried about what people are going to think about us, or we're just fastened to this idea that like being loyal is the way to go in any and all circumstances, right? There's that ride or die friend, and going down with a sinking ship. People often associate those with like loyalty or consistency, and it's not always smart consistency. It's not always smart loyalty. So today we're going to talk about ditching the foolish consistency and holding fast to the smart consistency, and look at how that looks at different times in our lives, how changing your mind, I think, is in many cases a very good thing. And also it would be a waste of an episode if I didn't also talk about when changing your mind might not be what the doctor ordered for growth, because that is at the real heart of this. So to start, let's talk about consistency and how it might change. I wanted to bring this fun story in. So my husband, like a lot of people, he got into making sourdough bread during COVID, back in 2020. Now he went like and researched the very best starter. It was like this 100-year-old starter. He like ordered it and rehydrated it and like brought it to life and was very consistent in how he treated the starter. 6 years later, he's still making the sourdough bread every couple of weeks. And he tends to that starter like it is little baby, like it's his job. He's always following the rules with it and making sure, even if he's away, he'll like text me, like put the starter in the fridge, take the starter out. And when he actually makes the bread itself, it follows a very specific, consistent timeline, same recipe, down to like, I'm talking the micrograms. Now, hypothetically, you would think that creates the same exact bread every single time, but it does not. It is so different all of the time. In fact, I've taken to saying best bread ever more often than not because it truly is not the same every single time. Depending on the weather, depending on the season, depending on the way the moon is like hanging in the sky, the bread takes on sometimes a different shape. Sometimes it takes on like a different level of tanginess. Sometimes it's a different consistency. And I think we should think of our consistency similarly, unless you're producing like factory quantities of prepackaged preserved chemicals, that would not apply to this because those are always going to taste somehow the exact same every single time. But when you're being original and when you're being authentic and organic and genuine and real, consistency will look different season by season. It will look different when the moon is hanging in the sky, when you have a sore throat, when, Mercury's in retrograde. I'm teasing, but it will look different in different seasons. And consistency in one area of your life may at times require to be less flexible or less frequent in other areas. So, if you have more commitments, it might mean that you have a lesser frequency in all your commitments. Some stretches and some seasons are going to require you to show up more, and some are going to have you showing up less. So, for example, like a big launch season, or if you're trying to promote an event or a workshop, or you're trying to get through the slump of a slow summer in your business, those might all require more showing up. Whereas, a dark night of the soul or welcoming a new baby in the family or training your puppy, that might require you to show up less and be more consistent with the other thing that you're looking at. So that's like the true balance, for lack of a better word, when we talk about work and life and business and life. The true balance is really just like an ebb and a flow. And it's working not to resist that ebb and the flow, and not to stubbornly cling on how you've always done things just because that's how you've always done things. So I really believe, like for me anyway, and I can't speak for you, but the goal for me is really like a sustainable consistency, a sustainable reliability, not some heroic pace, right? That's going to have me like burning out and abandoning ship. I actually had on my former podcast, she built this, and I'll include a link to the episode because it was a really good episode. I had the authors Jeffrey and Jamie Downs of the book Streak on my show. And the book Streak is really about being consistent with your habits, but making them so ridiculously simple that you pretty much can't miss a day. I mean, you could not miss a day on your very worst day. So it's literally like not floss my teeth every day. It's literally like put a piece of floss in my mouth every day, right? Or write one sentence a day, or sit on my rowing machine, or tie my sneakers, put my sneakers on. Okay. So it's like all of these things that you just keep that streak, and it helps you to reach your longer term goals. And you make them so stupidly simple. It's not even funny, like so manageable, even on your very worst of days. The idea is that, like, by having a gentle cadence with super simple, you usually, first of all, end up doing the harder thing. But secondly, even on your worst of days, that is going to be like this overly ambitious goal you've set where, you know, you have enough days of not being able to reach that. And then that goal is out the window. So that's kind of the mindset there. And I really do think that like a gentle cadence, it is going to beat an overly ambitious one every single time. So something you can manageably be consistent with is better than something you cannot. Secondly, or thirdly, I don't know what number we are on, but changing your mind is not to be confused with like being flaky or wishy washy. It is a sign of growth. You are supposed to grow and learn and change your mind and evolve your thinking, right? That is like the point of being alive. I love this quote from F. Scott Fitzgerald, and I'm hoping I don't butcher it, but he says, the test of first rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in your mind at the same time. So I'm not sure where this all came from, but I think that a lot of us don't see it that way. A lot of us think that changing your mind is like bad, or it's unreliable, or it's a sign of weakness or something like that. Like it means, oh, they don't know what they're standing for, or they're wishy washy, or they're unreliable. And I think for business owners, it can be even worse because a pivot can look like downright failure. So, what I often see, and what I've done actually to myself too, is I've just like white knuckled decisions I've made, even if I've outgrown them. I've kept trying to force myself to do a thing that is just no longer working, or it's no longer for me, or I've grown past, right? So I just want to remind us that you are allowed to change your mind. And you are also allowed to change your mind in a way that is best for your life and the direction you're going and your choices and your values. Know better, do better. That's what Maya Angelou says. Being open, seeing that there is more gray out there than black and white, changing your mind in response to new information or a new season, that is the most consistent thing we can do for ourselves, especially when we keep that undercurrent, that underlying commitment of growth to ourselves and truth to ourselves and serving the people that we're serving at the highest level as well as we possibly can. I know I recently did an episode on like things I quit and things I stuck with, but I shared in that episode that there was a group that I had kind of decided I wasn't going to be part of anymore. Like maybe I wasn't really a good fit. And it's funny because I actually am reconsidering. So I made a list of all these cons. And when I look at them now, I realize a lot of it was just like me being in kind of a negative headspace. And I need to give it another chance. I'm in a different season now. I can see things in a different way and how maybe it was influencing some of those cons that I wrote and my judgments. So I just say that as a reminder that, you know, a new season, new information, or just a new readiness and a different openness, a different mindset, it can really reopen those doors that maybe you decided, oh, no, that is not for me. I'm closing that door. I also shared with you that I have shut down some things, walked away from things that I thought I was really, really into, but no, I just grew past them or through them or away from them. And that can happen very, very fast. And it can also happen very, very slowly. It depends on, the situations. Recently, I've even been working on changing my mind around some of my personality traits. I don't mean I'm changing my personality necessarily, but if you can believe it, I'm actually looking at some of these and saying, I wonder if that's really true about me. I wonder if that's really who I am, or if that's sort of what I've been doing to make it this far, to survive, right? The thing I've always thought is something that I'm questioning about myself right now. So you can even change your mind on who you thought you were and also who you're deciding to be. And that is big. And you're not being inconsistent by doing that. You're opening yourself up to like this most incredible form of growth, I think, and saying, I think it would be foolhardy of me not to consider this alternative. The other thing I've changed my mind on is making no my default versus yes. Alex Sanfilippo in a recent episode, he uses this and I think it's brilliant. And for me, in the season I'm in, it's a little bit of a better approach for me to be more discerning and make sure that I have the energy and that I'm focused on what matters most to me right now, because what matters most to me has always mattered, but I have not always let it matter. I have not always put it first and foremost in my life as what matters most. So by defaulting to no instead of yes, I'm able to do that a little bit more. And it sounds snobby, but it's actually really, really awesome because the things and people and places and activities you say yes to are like, oh my God, what an honor and exciting to be able to do those things with your friends or with your family or with a service provider. Like that is all very, very exciting. Like I want everybody to do this so that when they're saying yes, they're not just like, sure, fine, but they're really saying yes. Like I chose this, this was meaningful to me. This matters to me. You mattered to me. I think that's very exciting. So, whether you're just like considering getting rid of products or services, or you're maybe thinking about walking away from something that you've built for 12 years, it doesn't matter what's on the table. But I do want to remind you that you don't need to just keep something alive to prove that you are not a quitter, right? You are consistent and loyal. You are not a quitter because you know what? There is nothing to prove. There is only the only thing to prove is that you can be true and honest to yourself and with yourself and in alignment with who you are and who you're becoming and want to be. Lastly, I think it's important to talk about when not to change your mind, because I am by no means suggesting we just like quit everything. And sometimes I do think that we quit things for the wrong reasons. So, quick do and don't. Do change your mind because you know better, or the season has changed, or you are growing. Don't change your mind because you're scared, or you're bored, or you're tired of being consistent, or you're avoiding discomfort, or you're just chasing the next shiny object. Do change your mind if you are updating. Don't change your mind if you are bailing. And it takes a lot of self awareness and a lot of honesty and some repetition, I think, to be able to tell them apart. I usually can tell by how I feel after I made the decision. So, for example, when I made that decision, like, oh, this group is not for me, I could feel it right away. I'm like, I wonder if that's true because that does not feel true. So I had to sit with it, of course. And then I said, you know what? I think that I was bailing. I think I am bailing. This is not an update, it's a bail. So remember those. Do change if you're updating. Don't change if you're bailing. Only you can know, but it does take a little like honesty and sitting with it. And I do think you know after you make the decision. So in closing, I find still I've been saying this for years, like consistency is key, and everybody says that, but I do think that consistency is super, super important. It's not for the birds. Okay. It's not for the birds. But it is for the birds if it is consistency that never wavers, if it never changes when it's something that should be changing, when it's something that does not actually matter to you, that's not actually getting you to where you want to go. Consistency is a lot deeper than just like, oh, check that box today, check that box today, every single day, infinitum. It is about being consistent and staying true to who you are and where you're going. The who, the how, the why, the what, the where, the how often, those things are probably always going to change and evolve and look different and have different containers. But the value of holding true to yourself, having your own back, no matter what, that remains the assignment. So give yourself permission to change your mind. Sorry, there's hair in my face. To change your mind where you need to. I really do think that that is like one of the most consistent things that we can do. And on that note, I will see you next week. I think I'm going to be joined by a special guest next week. So see you then. Thanks for joining me on this week's episode of Small Business Casual. If you love the show, make sure to rate, review, and share it with a frazzled business owner that you care about. Because this shouldn't feel like a roller coaster ride, more like a scenic train ride with snacks. Don't forget those snacks.